funny how a movie about a guy like Forrest Gump, someone who just kind of goes wherever life takes him, can really make you think about life's big questions.
Right.
I mean, this analysis you sent over about the spiritual side of the film,
Hmm.
it really has me seeing it differently.
Yeah, it's really interesting how the film takes Forrest's innocence, that pure way he sees the world, and uses it to explore some pretty deep stuff about life, dealing with the good and the bad.
Yeah, totally. We often think of innocence as something you grow out of.
What?
It's almost a disadvantage in such a messy world.
Right.
But this source makes a really strong case for forced simplicity actually being his biggest strength.
Absolutely. Like the film is suggesting that by approaching life with that kind of childlike openness, that humility, it might be the key to experiencing a more fulfilling life, just like Forrest does.
And he goes through some tough stuff, right? It's not like he lives in some fantasy world.
Yeah.
But he seems to handle it all with this, I don't know, this sense of acceptance and kindness.
And that's a really important point to bring up. It goes back to this whole idea of destiny versus free will, which the source unpacks through that classic line, life is like a box of chocolates.
Oh, I love that line.
You never know what you're going to get. But the thing is, you still get to decide how you're going to enjoy each piece, right?
So how does Forrest kind of embody that balance between accepting the unknown and actually making choices that shape his own life?
Well, the source points out that Forrest seems to get this idea of non-attachment almost instinctively. He doesn't get all hung up on needing things to go a certain way. Like, take his running, his love for Jenny, keeping his promises. He puts his whole heart into those things. But he doesn't get fixated on a specific outcome. He walks this line between taking action and being okay with whatever happens.
That's a pretty deep life lesson.
Yeah.
That it's not about just letting life happen to you, but finding that balance between trying your best
Yeah.
and learning to let go.
Exactly. And it's amazing. All the things Forrest does, his kindness, how hard he works, his loyalty, they all play a part in shaping the incredible life he ends up having. It's not just dumb luck.
And speaking of incredible, you got to talk about Forrest's relationships, talk about loyalty.
Right.
The man's a walking example of it.
Yeah, and that's where the film's exploration of love gets really interesting. His relationships, especially with Jenny, show us what unconditional love really means. Not the fairy tale version we see so often, but a more complicated, maybe even messier picture of love, a more human one.
And that's what makes them so captivating to watch. Jenny's life, it's not perfect, is it? She makes choices some people might judge pretty harshly, but Forrest's love never changes. It's like he sees past those choices to something deeper inside her.
Exactly. It speaks to a powerful spiritual truth. Acceptance and love have the power to heal, to transform. He doesn't try to change her. He just loves her unconditionally and gives her a sense of stability when everything else is chaotic.
You know, it's funny. Even though their relationship romantically isn't exactly traditional, they always have this bond. It's more than just romance. It shows how powerful it can be to be seen and accepted for who you really are.
And it's not just with Jenny that he shows that kind of loyalty.
Right. Like with Bubba, that promised to start the shrimping business.
Exactly. I mean, he went through a lot. It would have been easy to forget all about that.
But he doesn't. He makes it happen. And not just starting the business, but taking care of Bubba's family, too.
Which I think really shows us this deep spiritual idea that the connections we make, they have meaning, They have these ripple effects that go way beyond what we might expect. He honors that promise to Bubba, even after Bubba's gone.
It's those little things, those acts of love and keeping your word that really get to me. And then you have Lieutenant Dan, such a different kind of relationship.
Totally. It's fascinating, right? You've got Forrest with his simple faith and optimism, and then Dan, who's struggling with anger, with bitterness, questioning what his life even means after losing his legs.
And it's not like Forrest swoops in and suddenly everything's okay, but his compassion, it does something.
It creates a space for healing, right? Their journey together, it shows the power of connecting with another person, even when you're dealing with so much loss. Forrest's friendship, it's like a mirror for Lieutenant Dan.
Showing him a different way to see the world.
Yeah.
And eventually, he finds some peace with it, even gratitude for the life he has.
Yeah, and that connects to another big theme the source talks about, dealing with loss with grace. Because as much good as he experiences, Forrest goes through a lot of heartbreak, too.
Yeah. It's like he just gets it, That loss is just part of life. He doesn't pretend it doesn't hurt, but he didn't let it make him bitter. The way he grieves, there's this quiet strength to it.
Yeah, the source calls it accepting life's cycles. It's like he doesn't try to fight the grief or outrun it. He honors the people he's lost by really living, by loving, by finding those moments of joy.
It makes you think about that Buddhist idea, how holding on to things too tightly just causes pain, because nothing stays the same forever. And Forrest, in a way, he seems to get that. He lets himself feel the sadness of loss, but he doesn't let it take over.
Exactly. And by doing that, he shows us a different way to look at grief. It reminds us that you can miss someone and still appreciate life, you know? You can keep loving, keep finding joy in the present.
It's about making space for both, right? For the sadness and the beauty, accepting the past, but knowing that life keeps going, that there's still so much out there.
Yes. And that brings us back to what makes Forrest Gump such a powerful film, I think. It speaks to that desire we all have for a simply more genuine way of life, moving through the world with an open heart, with kindness, with love that doesn't quit.
It's like the film is asking us what would happen if we all lived, even just for a day, with a little bit of Forrest spirit. Embracing that optimism, seeing the good in people, finding joy in the little things.
It's a great question to ask ourselves. And maybe that's the most important message of all. That when we choose to be kind, to be open, to love without holding back, we open ourselves up to a life with more meaning, more richness. Even with all the uncertainty, all the heartbreak.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's given me a lot to think about. I think I might have to watch Forrest Gump again soon. See it with new eyes.
It's been my pleasure. It's amazing how these stories can keep surprising us, you know? The more we explore them, the more we find.